Hey all, so I think we have a pretty interesting one today because this is our war against ISO8, a, you know, famous top alliance. They've been at the pinnacle of war for literally years. You expect to go up against a stacked and well-placed defense and for them not to die very much. I actually have a very good friend over at ISO8. Cap Communist used to play with me, with Stranz, and even with Godman, who just recently joined our battle group, who played with him at ISO8 for quite a while, and before that with all of us together, is absolutely brilliant player. He's the one who originally taught me about wake-up intercepts, which I still think is an underrated skill, and has always been a champion of underrated characters and interesting interactions. So you probably understand why we get along. But moving on to this first Korg, I do not consider myself the best player when it comes to fighting Korg. I used to have him down completely cold. Like, I was one of those players who was comfortable taking him with magic, doing shallow step backs. Like, I had all of it down. I had the L1 evade, but when I took a brief retirement before joining SSx, it's like those skills kind of vanished, and I don't think they've ever fully come back. I'm at about like 70% on his evade, which is usually enough for me, and you'll probably see that come into play here. But the basic plan here is going to be just play the node. Like, Claire avoids his thorns damage, and that's all I need her to do. If I play the node properly, then he will not gain many furies, and so even if he throws an unblockable special one and I mess up the evade, which can happen, as long as I don't get actually cornered and then destroyed the way Korg can do, we will be fine. Now, I am going to do exactly one fancy thing that I dueled quite a bit for, and you'll see that right here in a second, where he throws his heavy and I throw a light attack and then throw my heavy to make sure I land it. That's because, as I've said many times, Power Struggle is the easier of the strike counter nodes because you just have to worry about their power, but the cleanest way to do that early on is to make sure you throw a heavy. And at this point, I'm also getting nervous because this Korg is backing me up and not throwing many heavies. I also should have just parried here instead of blocking. That was actually a pretty important mistake because if he had done even one more hit and I hadn't retaliated and then he had heavied in the corner, I could have lost the fight right there unless I flat out took hits. So don't do that, DLL. But other than that, that first heavy put me on pace such that my specials are going to be the remainder of the power that I need to give him. So I can just get there with mediums and lights. I don't need to do anything else fancy. And after that close call, what I'm really focusing on is just backing him up. So obviously I can't hit into his block, but I can. I think I was going for a parry there and then realized he was going to be a little too late, and that was fine. I just backed off because I also needed to bait the special too. But yeah, at this point, my primary focus is continue to play the node and back him up where possible. So there, I mess up the evade. I got it several times in duels, but like I said, I do not consider myself the best Korg fighter, and I kind of expected that would happen at some point, which is why I don't even go for the evade there. This is my only Claire fight on this set of boosts. I have another one with her in Tier 2, but I don't mind healing her up, and we are easily winning the HP race here. After that initial scare, there wasn't ever really a moment in that fight where it was dangerous, I don't think. So this next one is quite simple. This is a popular place for iHulk, as we've talked about before, because if you don't play the node and you try to nuke him, he gains Furies, he eventually goes unblockable and or unstoppable when he's regenning, and then even one hit if he catches you on a dashback, that combo can kill you. Fortunately, with Killmonger, that's not really a thing, because Killmonger can play the node against him really effectively while doing a fair amount of bleed damage, which allows you to limit his gamma gain. Now, I did not throw a debuff siphoner on here, as I probably should have, but we're limiting his gamma gain enough that even if he heals, it's going to be for almost nothing. And so if we just wait out that short little period, we shouldn't take too much brute force damage, and then we should be able to finish him off quickly after that. You'll also notice that, as I've talked about before a few times, while I did use up all of my charges once, I am intentionally taking some extra parries because that gives me power and that allows me to play around the node better. I don't know why I threw that heavy there instead of just doing a medium light. That was like a pure brain fart. But right there is perfect because the ideal way that this node plays actually is for him to have a bar of power right as he goes into his unblockable, because then you can bait it out and you have a safe opening to reset brute force, exactly as happened there. Then we just waited out his unstoppable regen period, and we were good to go. So as you can see, Slay is fond of being in my war videos. We are kind of playing tag here because he took down that shared node, and then I placed these pre-fights and then backed out, and you'll see the recording cut because I needed him to place the House of X pre-fight here. Slay was actually the one that pointed out to me that Peni's abilities specify that she can only purify stun debuffs, not stuns. And that means that if you have House of X, you can safely attack into her and even heavy her without triggering her auto block. And so while this is a really good placement to counter, Archangel or some of the other popular power snack counters, and while Quake can still get around this, I am most comfortable taking this node with Reed, and I think it's both faster and safer than Quake most of the time. And the important thing is I just need to be able to safely land heavies, and this lets me do that. I did power start here instead of invulnerable because I figured that there was no real chance that she was going to kill me with a single combo, and so I figured that even if I had to worry about throwing my L2 into her block and then she comboed me, I would still be okay, and I would rather have that L2 sooner so I could shut down Power Snack. And suppression, because you'll see here she isn't really throwing those specials. Now, I probably should have evaded earlier to try and bait it out. But at this point, if I evade, because I only have 2 stacks, she would have still gained the special too, and that's exactly what I was trying to avoid, because I really thought that I was blocking there, but anyone who's fought Peni knows that there's kind of a slight hitch right as she throws the special too, and if you are not literally just sitting there holding block, nothing else, it's very easy to get hit. That does kind of show off why Reed is so good for this node. I didn't mean to do this so soon after showing it with the Professor X fight against 4 Loki, but consider the fact that those instant incinerates that Peni inflicts on her special 2 did about 33% less damage against Reed than they would have against most anyone else because he has that energy resistance. Additionally, because of that first Careful Study passive applying on activation, the entire special did 25% less damage. And so if you add back in that what would be a 33% increase to the damage of that special, and then have all of the incinerates do 50% more on top of that, that easily could have killed someone with my health pool, even with me max boosted. She is incredibly dangerous if you push her to that special too, which is why she makes a lot of sense on Power Snack. Thankfully, I was using Reed. He survived it, it put me into courage range, and we were good to go. I prefer to finish that fight with a special 1 and to have it fully ramped by throwing 2 special 2s, but, that was a good placement that complicated things for me, and I kind of had to play around it a little bit. I still got some charges. So we have Magneto here. I've taken this with Claire recently. I'm going to be using, I believe, the same strategy I did last time, which is to use the Magneto corner trick, as it's sometimes called. I'm just going to back the hell up at the beginning of the fight, wait for him to heavy me in the corner, throw a light attack because it will trigger his unstoppable and put it into cooldown, but he will not be able to hit me again before I can block. And thankfully, before I can block without triggering a parry, which is an extremely useful thing on this particular node. But I did go ahead and indestructible, because sometimes when you're dashing back, or when you're trying this, if your timing's a little bit off, it's easy to get hit. So see right there, we turned it off, and then instantly got an intercept, funnily enough. And then I think, yeah, that's what I remembered, instantly getting another one. So it's kind of funny because the whole reason for using that trick is so that you don't have to rely on intercepts, and then he just gave us nice and easy ones. It happens. So there we go again. Like you can see, it's not a parry, which would be deadly on this node. It just allows us time to block. And so it really makes this fight incredibly simple. Now, I think this is the point where he forgets he knows how to throw specials. And so it gets a little bit dicier because I can only back him up so much. I could have pushed him to the special too. You'll see me healing here because I feel like the fight's going quickly enough and I wanted to get back a little bit in case I had to push him to a special 2 and then block it. I'm decent at the Magneto special 2, or for House of X's special 1 evade, but I don't risk it in war if I can help it. That's just a fantastic way to get crit and then die. So he gives us another intercept there. I'm still trying to bait the special 1. You see me hit into block, which is something I see a lot of people forget to do if they're trying to bait and start panicking a little bit. There, I hit him. I'm not surprised that triggering the unstoppable convinces him to finally throw it. Let's see, I think I end up getting one more special 2 in, maybe? Maybe he throws this. Oh yeah, he throws this and I dash back, which puts me out of range. Because if you're not familiar with this, yep, there's the poorly timed dash back I was talking about. If you time Magneto 1's special evade properly, if you are close enough to him that the first hit doesn't hit you and throw you back, that you can then very safely dodge the projectile and punish it. But if you dash back from the first hit, even if you don't need to like I did, then you're too far away to land the punish. And then cheekily, I ended that the same way I did the last time I took Magneto, by throwing a heavy and taking advantage of the deep wounds instant damage. So we have Overseer. You've now seen me take him a couple times with Killmonger. It's just a pretty hard counter. He has class advantage. He'll do tons of damage to him, so he doesn't really care about the regen, and he just completely hoses the auto block, because Overseer only gains that auto block when he throws his special, and it's an easily evadable, easily punishable special, so it's super easy to get True Strike back up from it. And then we also don't have to worry about openings, since Overseer goes stun immune when he has that auto block up, because we're spamming the special 1 and we have those counterpunch to give us all these openings. Now right there, I let them fall off. I decide to go ahead and throw the special 2 instead. It finishes it. It doesn't really matter. But another thing I like about Killmonger there is that it doesn't really matter if the special concussions turn off anything for you, because Killmonger doesn't really need the effects on his specials, not on that node. If the counterpunch fails, I'm just going to block and bait some heavies, and now I have a debuff on me, giving me free willpower healing to allow me to block and take that damage. So there's really no downside to using specials. Like I said, Killmonger's a fairly hard counter for Overseer almost anywhere. So regen boost for this MODOK, because there's going to be block damage at the start, but you've seen me take this before. The whole idea of this is push him to 1 bar of power, get True Strike, spam the special one for openings without parry, and that's the whole fight. I also block and bait heavies a few times because you don't always have the power gain to get to your special one quickly because it's reliant on crit luck and you landing bleeds, but that's okay. You can do this fight without ever landing a single bleed. The important thing is just getting True Strike off of those special ones. You can then win the entire fight blocking attacks and waiting for heavies and or getting intercepts. Like, Killmonger has plenty of health. He's going to kill MODOK plenty fast enough. I am making a point to use the counterpunch to trigger reverb when I can, because that's just a good way to speed the fight up as long as Killmonger is duped and get that extra damage in. So this next fight is a little unfortunate because this placement is actually, I think, the first place I died with Killmonger in war. It was 2 deaths at the end of an otherwise deathless season. I think my second war in SSx. And then you see this happens. I approach this fight the exact same way every single time. I bait his heavy at the start. I hit him a few times, and notice because he pushed me over bars of power, he gained spider nonsense. I honestly just missed that. And somehow those first 2 heavy evades, despite me doing it the exact same way every single time, I've taken him with Killmonger on so many nodes at this point. I went for the heavy evade the same way every time, but those first 2 were late, which is why I got parried, and somehow the last one was, well, I guess also late, which is why I got hit. But somehow I got hit by that one. The first, yeah. I really don't have anything else to say on that. It's possible that I was just slow. Like, I did my duels for this one, but see how easy it is there? Like, I know Killmonger moves back faster, and so that's why I get the punish there. But I promise, on my end, it felt the same both times. Notice here I'm not punishing the heavy, even though I'm sure I could have in both of those places. It was just a little bit gun-shy here. But all I needed to do in this fight was counter a single special one, and I had it under control. I just could not do that last fight. That death was also maybe the first time I've ever seen Killmonger's power gain on receiving debuffs work against him, because I had more power than I knew what to do with, and that let him build that spider nonsense, and that's why he evaded. What I should have done in the first fight after that first parry is that then I should have backed up, gone for a parry like I did in this one, and landed a combo, because I didn't need to throw a special right away. What I needed was to push him to a bar so that he threw a special. That is the single most important thing about this, because once you get True Strike up, then you can also hit into his block. You can do all kinds of things that you can't safely do if you don't have it. So I'm very sad about that death, honestly, but I don't know. It happens. I don't know what I would do differently, because the second fight, I feel like I did exactly the same thing, and it worked. Sometimes that happens. Unfortunately, I was not the only one who had a bad day, and I think we put up our worst performance of the season against ISO8, who had a predictably good showing, and so it wasn't particularly close, which is a real bummer. But, you know, we have stuff to work on. We'll clean it up. We talk afterwards, as always, and moving on and moving forward. But I hope you guys found this one interesting. Despite the death here, it has been really fun for me to get to use Killmonger so much more lately. I think he's actually been my most used attacker over the last few wars, and it really just shows how great he is. I mean, yeah, he died there, but played the way that I did, almost any champion would. So I don't think we can hold that one against him. And you see how many other places he really comes in handy. If you guys did enjoy this, then keep an eye out tomorrow for another video with 2 bonus fights involving Spider-Man 2099 and Anti-Venom. One is from Stranz as usual, but Work in Progress, who I've mentioned on the channel a few times, also donated his boss solo, and there's some really cool interactions there. So if you don't want to miss that, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I'll catch you then. Take care.